Okie dokie then. We have ourselves HomeStory Cup Finals. Without the cat cam, that was just showing paper towels. This was played a week ago, couple days and a week ago. I heard it was excellent, and that alone made me interested. But it also is interesting because we have two unlikely people in the finals. Now, they're a little more likely to be in the finals of this HomeStory Cup because we were missing some of the heavy hitters, such as Cyril and Rainer, basically, like two biggest ones. But GuMiHo beat Clem to get here, and ShoWTimE beat Here Marine, I believe, to get here. So, I think that's the way it went. And those are good results for them. Those are really good results for them. ShoWTimE, you know, I think he beats Here Marine often enough, but it's just funny how often they match up against each other, the two Germans duking it out. Used to be very similar in playstyle, despite being different races, but I think Here Marine's not so much. And then GuMiHo, well, good at TVT, because he's in the best training ground for TVT in the world, which is Korea. I would say Clem, still, when he's on form, is one of the best TVTers in the world himself. And he has proven that over the last 2 years by defeating many a good TVTer of Korean Terrans. So, you know, that's actually kind of surprising results to see both of these guys in the finals, but I'm hyped for it. Yeah, will kindly ask no spoilers for people who didn't manage to watch it, and for me, who did not manage to quite understand who won. It's like I kind of know, but I'm not sure, which is fine with me. That adds more of the mystery to the broadcast. So, yeah. With that all said and done, 2 minutes into the game, bottom right ShoWTimE, top left GuMiHo. HomeStory Cup, not necessarily the most prestigious tournament, but particularly I think these two people would really, let's say, how do you say this, would really not benefit from the type of environment that was from HomeStory Cup, but maybe that is the right way to put it. You know, it's been a while since either one of these players has actually been on a much bigger stage for the finals. I mean, GuMiHo getting to a finals in GSL is cool, but the GSL finals the crowd is actually probably the exact same size between GSL and HomeStory Cup when they are in the old GSL studio. I saw that they were in a new one for the most recent one. And for ShoWTimE, it's been a long time as well. A lot of his previous accolades, the actual championships that he's won, have been, you know, slightly smaller tournaments, but times where there is still a very, very, very large European presence, and winning a even only German tournament, which he did a couple of times, was actually pretty freaking good. Because Germany has always had really good StarCraft 2 players. So yeah, maybe it kind of benefits them both to be in this environment, and both of them are not partiers either. I mean, they can have a drink and they can have fun, of course, but it's not like either one of these guys are coming in from a hangover Saturday night, barely alive, like previous HomeStory Cup finals may have been. Some, not all. But we got ourselves a very interesting opener coming out from GuMiHo. Now, he does this, so it's not particularly rare for GuMiHo, but it is still abnormal. This Marauder opener, and it almost looks like a Marauder Hellion all-in from like a TVZ build, is not uncommon for GuMiHo. It is kind of tricky too. Sometimes a Protoss player will not scout the tech lab on the barracks. They'll see a barracks and a 1-Rax expand and be like, oh, I know everything I need to know, no problems here. And they'll leave, which seems to kind of have been what ShoWTimE did there, which is a little scary. So if he had then raced forward with the Adept, well, that thing is dead, as you can see here, or God forbid a Stalker or two. Now, this Adept only sees 3 Hellions and a Reaper. That medevac did not reveal itself, and he did not see the Tech Lab, which is no longer on the barracks anyway. So ShoWTimE is still kind of in the dark. Now, he's playing into a 4 gates, so this is going to give him a lot of material to work with. Plus, there's already walls here. No shield battery, which would have been the real kicker. But nonetheless, I think without the shield battery, the number of units should make up for this. That pylon is looking a little dangerous, but it cannot be targeted right now because the Stalkers are the main event. Reaper Grenade, even crowd controlling the Stalkers for a second, is pretty neat. But it is clear that ShoWTimE will be able to mass up enough units to defend this. Eventually. In terms of the one-for-one trades here, this might have actually been too bad for GuMiHo. In fact, absolutely, it's fantastic for him. He escapes with the medevac as well as 2 Marauders. So yes, absolutely fantastic. The problem is that in terms of how the infrastructure is back home for GuMiHo, is it good enough to actually defend the incoming 4-gate? Because while the stalker number was reduced, it could have easily been up to 10 already. The production and the economy was not reduced. So you still got a 4-gate incoming, and in fact, that 4-gate just took down the medevac as well as the 2 marauders that were inside of it, and that would have been really helpful. 2 fully healed marauders with the medevac boosting them back up to help out this infrastructure, that would have been gorgeous. Now it's gone, and it gives ShoWTimE just the tiniest little bit of hope. He still has to deal with 2 tanks, which is kind of the bare minimum of defense for a 4-gate, as well as a Viking, which really complicates how he uses the Warp Prism. But maybe he can find enough damage to make this a macro game. It is pretty difficult to do, but we see that ShoWTimE is already prepping for a Nexus. He's got 600 minerals in the bank. There we go. Nexus does get slapped down. Unfortunately, in terms of the counterattack, it really does not find much more. It can't even find those 4 stalkers in the Warp Prism to go for the SCVs. Nicely done. That tank was too far forward without the knowledge of where ShoWTimE stalkers were. That was a huge mistake there from GuMiHo. However, ShoWTimE, it does seem, is wary of that Viking Marine combo. Puts his Warp Prism way far behind. So actually missed an opportunity to save some of these stalkers with a so-called second blink. And so a tank was killed in exchange for 2 stalkers, which I actually think is pretty fair for the Terran, particularly when they are no longer dependent on the tanks to defend. It's clear that there's enough bio and not enough stalkers at this point. In fact, it should be quite clear to GuMiHo that there just hasn't been an increase in stalkers. They might have caught him out of position, but that's still the same number of stalkers he's seen for a while. So certainly the Terran, the Protoss must be moving on. Now ShoWTimE sieges up an observer here. Yes, I said siege. Basically what it does. And so it actually doesn't get the timing to see the medevac jet out from the main base. Those are 8 Marines. They'll slaughter probes pretty quickly, but not necessarily the Nexus. That's the question. How many probes does it get? GuMiHo very content with his defense back at home. ShoWTimE totally unaware that his army's going to be elsewhere. Of course, he's also skipping a lot of production right now because he's trying to fit in upgrades, technology, and economy behind this very unideal opener for him. So there's not even a baseline of units defending at home. Fortunately, the Zealots get warped in. Not so much as, I think, a what-if to this medevac drop, but rather because he saw the army was moving out. He's trying to prepare for the inevitable attack. Unfortunately, 9 probes go down. The stalkers were caught. The recall didn't really give them a lot of potential to actually kill that medevac. And ShoWTimE is still in a decent bit of trouble. GuMiHo supply, not really as good as I would have expected, considering how this opener went into what I would call a successful defense. Yes, he did lose a couple of SCVs. There's some Blink Stalker Micro, but again, Stalkers went down for everything. There was never a purely advantageous trade for ShoWTimE in this game. But GuMiHo, I've never really been very confident in his TVP. I can't say that I don't think it's very good anymore, because every so often he performs really well with his TVP. Gets some upsets, gets to the finals of the GSL, whatever it is. So I feel like I can't authoritatively say that his TVP is not his best. I could maybe look up some stats, but whatever. It never feels very confident. And now I will definitely hold to that. As a personal opinion, GuMiHo's TVP always looks a little awkward. This is the best way to put it. That was a hallucinated probe, by the way. When you hallucinate certain items, you get 1. And other items like probes, I believe you get 4. I think there's other items where you get 2. Maybe probes are 2, actually. Maybe I'm wrong. No, I think probes are 4. Like, looking around for all the hallucinated probes, I wasn't expecting to see that. But no one does it, right? It's usually hallucinated Oracle for Fake Out or hallucinated Phoenix because it's fast and it flies. Maybe Archons and Immortals as well in an actual battle. It's kind of neat. But probes? That's a rarity, but I really like it because that did give him at least 3, because that's what I saw, hallucinated probes on the field to get a little bit of scouting when he has no idea where GuMiHo is coming in from. Right now, ShoWTimE's army might actually be perfectly fine. 3 Colossus, charge is done, +1 is done as well. And we do have a Warp Prism in GuMiHo's main. Viking, what were you doing, buddy? It is 4 hallucination probes. Thank you. I thought it was, and I couldn't find the 4th one. But yeah, that Viking was out of position. The Zealot's a very successful distraction, and generally just a very successful drop in, killing the reinforcements, killing SCVs, really bothering GuMiHo, who's trying to do something in return, like a Wood of Mine drop, but so far I think they failed. I think they've actually even been killed, and then his army is not doing anything because he is distracted back at home. This is partially a multitasking issue sometimes, like they literally can't defend and attack at the same time. Other times it's just a smart thing to do because you don't want to half-ass defense and half-ass offense, and then nothing works out at all, right? So, yeah, it kind of sucks that there was no opportunity for GuMiHo to get some counter damage done, but I think if he went for it, it wouldn't have worked out anyway. Despite his army also being pretty nice, I believe it's 1-1, yes, with a decent amount of Marauders, plenty of Medivacs, and even those 2 tanks from the beginning. Actually running into the Protoss army all willy-nilly would not have worked out. He would have had to do a slow push. He was probably even planning on sieging his tanks over here and then doing the drop, and while you're handling Zealots back at home, you just aren't going to be really keen on doing that anymore. The ShoWTimE, after a potentially scary start here, actually seems to be, I'm not going to say in the lead, but he seems to be in a very, very good position. 4 bases, 5th base is on the way as GuMiHo's 4th starts on location, so that's better than nothing. GuMiHo has a powerful bio army that's going to have superior upgrades in 45 seconds, I suppose. ShoWTimE never got a second forge, but he did get a second robo, and so he is pumping out a very reliable number of disruptors. I would say getting to exactly where the Protoss wants to get. The Terran player is getting to Vikings, is getting to Ghosts, but honestly doesn't feel... with how many battles have not happened in this game, GuMiHo has chosen to play it kind of carefully, with his bio staying behind and waiting. I would have expected him to actually be able to get there a little bit faster. You know, 3-base saturation can technically afford all of those things, although it is quite expensive still, and you are not 3-basing all in from GuMiHo. You want to get a 4th base, but still. I am actually feeling this for ShoWTimE. I think he's gotten to the powerful Protoss position that can start to actually bully the Terran player. You still need to actually have like a decent fight, or you need to find the Terran player actually playing super defensive, which so far GuMiHo, despite not attacking, he's not just run home and sieged up in SimCity. He's not turtling. He is staying on the map. He wants to find the opportunity that ShoWTimE might present, which is running on the field and getting fully surrounded, which is all well and good, but I think that time has kind of passed in terms of who gets the benefit of the map control. Let's say a lot of the time this Protoss army starts to, because all it takes is one battle where GuMiHo goes, oh shit, that didn't work out for me, and he runs home. But the Protoss player then takes that map control, starts to really bully them with the disruptors. Maybe the Colossus get forgotten about as they get destroyed by Vikings, but they kind of do their job as a bridge anyway. And then it's up to the Terran player to, again, find that really awesome battle, the big surround, or maybe even start to think about those Liberators later on, which are worse in this meta. GuMiHo is actually going to find a cancel on the 5th base, and actually a decent battle up to the top side. ShoWTimE did split his army, but not as precisely as he would have hoped. He does not have God Vision. He barely has any observers. Oh, no, he actually has 3. 1 on the left, 1 in the middle, and, oh, 2 in the middle. Okay, maybe that... We'll fix that later. This time around, it looks like the army does get the advantage. It gets the jump on GuMiHo. And tanks were not sieged. The army was not prepared. And actually, it looks like it wasn't even healed up from its initial stim in combat beforehand. So that was a good chance for ShoWTimE. Can't really find a killing blow or anything like that. Can't even get to the planetary, but... like I said, I feel like it takes one bad battle for the Terran for this to kind of flip around, and suddenly it's ShoWTimE who has control over the map. Right now, they're battling hard for it. I don't think anyone really truly has control of the map. Oh my god, that might change! Oh my god! Oh, the disruptor shots definitely changed that one. I swear, seconds away from talking about how delicate a situation this is for both players. Like, having 2 armies, like, they literally were playing both with 2 armies, one to the left, one to the right, is extremely dangerous for both. It's a multitasking challenge at that point. And while disruptors seem like they get the benefit of someone not paying attention because they're one-hit kills, and you gotta give them that a little bit more than the Terran player, right? Nonetheless, the Terran player also would have had a chance to find the Protoss slip-in, not controlling the disruptors, and then just sniping every single one of them before the rest of the army gets taken down. So it was a delicate balance from both players, but it does seem at the end of the day, with those disruptor shots, we do finally have that consolidation of the Protoss army, and the bullying will continue if this is not the end of the game right here, right now. Disruptor's not quite taking out those tanks, which are helping a considerable amount. Good concave from the bio player as well. 3-2 versus 3-1, so the Terran had the favor there, and this might just be enough of a ragtag Terran army to actually push this back. Last Disruptor does get taken down. Colossus, however, lived through the battle. And we are talking about ShoWTimE on a successful 5 base economy, going up to 6, 75 workers. So the Zealot reinforcements did come in very, very swiftly. However, not swift enough. He doesn't want to continue attacking into what is a still pretty good Terran position. It was one of those moments where if you looked at it for half a second, the Terran army looks like it's being routed. And you're like, oh, okay, now's my chance. Let's go. But then it kind of comes together, and you're like, oh, that was 6 Marauders, not 3. That was 20 Marines, not 10. So you do have to be careful about that. But ShoWTimE just simply redirects his aggression towards the non-planetary base that is forming very, very soon. I'm looking at the Terran army right now, and actually my main concern is that this is no longer very good against Colossus. Colossus have a limited amount of time. Either the Vikings are taking care of them, or the Marauder count is so high that while they're useful, they don't look like the ultimate, beast of power that they should be. But when it's a mostly Marine army, those Colossus will actually kick butt. Fortunately for ShoWTimE, he also takes down the planetary before a battle ensued, because that would have been the worst case scenario. GuMiHo clearly wanted to take advantage of that, could not. Now tries to take advantage of the Disruptor being alone, couldn't do that either. Now he's on the high ground, yes, but his medevacs are out of juice. His army is stemmed, it's mostly Marines. Disruptor's trying to get some shots. There's not enough Terran actually getting the juicy shots. It's already all gone. These 3 Colossus, I believe, have been here from the beginning of this 16-minute game, and they came in hot towards the end. ShoWTimE, with a very solid PVT to start this series off, does feel like Protoss have been having a better time as of late, perhaps because of the patch, perhaps because of the maps, or perhaps because something was figured out. And we'll talk more about that in the second game. We're now loaded into game 2. In the top left of Site Delta, it is GuMiHo. And in the bottom right, we have ShoWTimE. I don't know why this reminded me of it, but if we have time to, fill, I guess I did promise to talk about the development of Protoss versus Terran. I'll do that too. But first of all, for some reason, I looked up a very old tournament, and I don't remember why, but I looked at the maps of that old tournament as well. And it really inspired me. I really want to do more tournaments that are literally just old maps to see how they work out. Some of them are officially broken, particularly when it comes to Liberators. Liberators coming along Legacy of the Void, a lot of pre-Legacy of the Void maps, and even the beginning Legacy of the Void maps didn't really compensate for the harassment and the minerals. So a lot of the old maps would have minerals like up to here, which then you literally could not deal with a Liberator at that point. You can't put anything behind your mineral line, it can't work. But some of the other ones are just fun. And I don't know why, but Site Delta kind of reminded me, I guess, of some of the older maps that we've had. Maybe it's color palette, or like a Ohana, like tilted, I suppose. I don't know, but I would like to do that more. Anyway, so the development of PVT, right? So it's hard to kind of blame the maps for any of the increase in the viability. There we go, viability of Protoss versus Terran, which was one of the most discussed matchups, I would say, of the last couple of months. People were legitimately concerned that this is the reason that Protoss can't make it very far. Versus Zerg, you even had Protoss players admitting, like, yeah, we're doing pretty well against them, and Zerg players, of course, complaining a little bit. But, PVT seemed to always be the one that was talked about the most. And the maps, I think, are the last thing you can blame. I think you absolutely have to look at the patch. The Liberators being a little less strong for the follow-up power push with Liberators that, like, just successfully kills the Protoss, cuts the head off the snake. A little less powerful. Defensively, they're also a little less powerful, and I think I'm sure that's true, but actually I can't recall too many games where the Terran player has actually thrown their hands up in the air and said, fine, I'll just turtle with Liberators, damn it, like they used to do. There's definitely a phase where that was one of the more common things to do, especially, I guess, when DT Blink was a common talking point. Before their nerf, which doesn't really nerf the versus planetary, but that's a whole nother discussion. And perhaps again on like different maps where it was easier to as well, I'm not sure. But it doesn't seem to happen anymore. Obviously, that would also be nerfed. But it does seem like the Protoss have also just kind of figured out some ways to control the matchup a little bit more in the mid-game as well. They saw a 4-gate in the last game. That has always been around. You could argue that MaxPax has shown how good it can be as far as a build, as well as far as a macro build. And I would accept that argument. MaxPax has definitely done wonders pushing the envelope for some of Protos's playstyles. So his 4-gate is pretty much the best. That's pretty much agreed upon. His post 4-gate is also some of the best. He's always able to somehow wiggle his way out of a terrible position. And ShoWTimE showed a little bit of that. Not in the way that I would say that MaxPax would, but he did recover from a 4-gate, despite not finding any really return damage and won the game. But then we're also seeing, I think, a lot more of I think Roddy summed it up quite nicely as a way with words he does. Colossus, and then just like a fuck ton of warp gates. Like that seems to be kind of the magic trick, which then he went on to say that if only someone had talked about it. I love when Roddy takes control or takes the credit, you know. My favorite thing that he does. But seriously, like, it does seem like these Colossus builds that go into a lot of warp gate production, so you have a very big army. It's actually not that concrete. It's kind of vulnerable, but it's a very big army. It's a very mobile one as well when you're throwing out zealots every which way. Things actually be pretty good. And it's not necessarily, again, what we saw from ShoWTimE last game, but I do feel like the ebb and flow of the mid-game map control has changed for the better in the Protos's eyes. A little bit of the opening being unsuccessful for GuMiHo, by the way. That medevac went in and went right back out. Didn't even get a scout. So I would not know that it is actually going to be a pretty quick third Nexus. Just 2-gate third Nexus after the beginning 4-gate. You now have that in GuMiHo's mind that this guy could be 4-gating me. And even though it's not the world's best 4-gate, I can assure you that ShoWTimE in a proper position could certainly deliver a very lethal 4-gate. So GuMiHo has to consider that. We'll check again on his scouting. I mean, that was like the Reaper or SCV scout, whatever it was, right? Hey, he really doesn't know anything that's going on. And what's going on is actually much faster charge this game. He still has 4 gases. He's still going up to Colossus, but much faster charge than the last time. And GuMiHo, well, going back to my... GuMiHo is maybe not my favorite TVP player. He doesn't swim with a lot of confidence. I don't look at his TVP and I'm like, I gotta copy that. That's gonna make me a better player. Not that I could anyway. But yeah, it also might be one of the reasons that ShoWTimE can look pretty good, like even better than usual, is that this might also be a stylistic thing. You know, maybe ShoWTimE is better than PvT, maybe Gum is a little worse, but then also the way that GuMiHo plays compared to someone else like Clem, which is usually the Terran that European players are playing, they'd certainly play differently. And I think it's also helping out ShoWTimE to a certain degree. It's weird to say that you're ever comfortable against a Korean Terran, but if you were to pick a Korean Terran to be comfortable against, I think it would actually be GuMiHo in this matchup in particular. Because I know that's kind of a wacky statement when you consider GuMiHo is one of the build order masters of StarCraft 2. He can do a lot of things, but when it comes to this matchup, I feel like he's not that type of guy anymore. TVZ, absolutely. TVT, love him in that. PvP, not my guy. You know, that's basically it. And ShoWTimE actually has a really poor record against Korean Terrans specifically. They were often what kept him from winning, like a round of 8 at Katowice, for instance. He faced Innovation, got absolutely bopped. So... it's maybe not like facing an Innovation, a Maru, a Beyond, or someone like that. But if ShoWTimE were to win this playoffs, it would not only be a championship for him for, it's been a while, but it also would be defeating, I feel like, one of his nemesis, which is the Korean Terran TM trademark, We do have the attack on the way, but GuMiHo, this game already feels like it's a perfect example of how I don't have confidence in GuMiHo's TVP. Like, I don't know. Like, not much has happened in this game. GuMiHo played a very reserved opening. Again, I think like high-grounded and whatnot. He is putting his 3rd on location, his 4th on location last game, too. But he's already down 30 supply. And that has a little bit to do with ShoWTimE's build, sure. Like, the Forge, for instance, did not come down very fast at all. Only starting +1. He pumped in that charge very, very quickly. He added gateways pretty quick as well, and he got up to 3 base saturation really fast too. So it just I mean, he's all together, and it feels like GuMiHo is climbing the ladder. So ShoWTimE is on top of whatever building they tried to climb, looking down on him without 1-1, but it's on the way now, a double forge, and is just waiting for the guy to get up so we can punch him, so we can kick him off the ladder, just like a nice little tap, right? Now let's see what GuMiHo can do to circumvent that issue, as he has done nothing so far in this game, but basically lose units. Oh my god, it didn't really come into my brain how much he's been winning. He got the Medivac, he got the Cyclone, he got a Marauder, he got a couple of SCVs. Yeah, ShoWTimE's in a very good spot. And GuMiHo just has done nothing to interrupt ShoWTimE, and nothing to make ShoWTimE feel very uncomfortable. This is ShoWTimE playing his A game, absolutely, but in general, as a Terran player, you want to make the other race feel a little uncomfortable because you're the aggressor 9 times out of 10. And this is just not an uncomfortable-looking ShoWTimE. He has his 4 bases up, his pylons put down, his zealots set up for a run-by, his main army ready to take that map control, which this game, GuMiHo isn't even contesting. He has seemingly accepted upon his first move out, which he then returned back home immediately from. He seems to have accepted that he is not going to play this aggressively. And I think there's a wisdom to it, sure. But on the other hand, it's probably one of the least volatile playstyles to try and get back into the game, I would say. It can take advantage of a Protoss player who is not known for their bloodthirst, which ShoWTimE in the past had, I think, a lot of problems ending the game when he could. He was the opposite of Hero, who tried too hard to end the game when he could. And there's obviously a balance that makes you a perfect Protoss that is very difficult to achieve. But yeah, if GuMiHo is hoping for that to happen, for ShoWTimE to make a bunch of mistakes, well, that's not going to happen in this game. GuMiHo is going to have to hope that he gets a big, gigantic, decently upgraded army, and gets a concave, and wins the battle. Simple enough. But the way this game has gone, it kind of feels like he's got one chance to do that, as opposed to a bit more of a back-and-forth game in which, you know, maybe he takes a half-bad battle, retreats, and then there's a little more action on the field. ShoWTimE seems more than happy to accept this type of game as he continues adding on 10 gateways, and he already is on a decent amount. 5 bases, 78 probes, 2 2s on the way, consistently chronoing those from what I could see. Now he's just out of chronos. Oh, he prioritizes the disruptors. That makes sense. He's even got War Prism speed already. You can mess this up as a Protoss. I just want to be super clear. You can absolutely mess this up. Speaking from personal experience as well as casting experience. The Terran Flare doesn't look like they're doing very much, but they get a good army, and then they win the battle because the Protoss kind of forgets how good the Terran army is. Oh, we've seen that, for sure. But this is really a teed-up strike here from ShoWTimE. A teed-up home run, rather. Teed-up strike doesn't make any sense. Let's see if he can actually get it. Bunker is not going to hold for very long, but it's better than nothing. This is not the attack that I think that ShoWTimE is really committing to. I was going to say he's going to wait for 2-2, and then maybe he will really commit at that point. Particularly when he's clicking on the Terran army and he sees that it's still only at 1-1. 3 tanks appropriately guarded by the mass amount of bio is very tricky, though. This is something that GuMiHo can rely on to defend for a big battle to battle, you know, like a big, just like, let's just force our armies together. The tanks protected like this will do a lot. But once GuMiHo tries to expand, which he is getting a 4th base. Oh, that's a 5th, excuse me. When he actually tries to get that on location, he's going to have to, you know, actually run around the map a little more. And then that will make it very difficult to protect these tanks from the charge lots. But I gotta say, GuMiHo seems to have really accepted his lot in life. He's going for a very tank-heavy mid to late game, which is uncommon because its chances of looking amazing, I think, are actually kind of small. Once the Terran has to mobilize more often, actually move their army more often, these tanks are extremely vulnerable to Zealots. Because I'm talking like the Zealots either get a run-by on top of them, and then it's just like, wow, I wasn't even close, shit. Or the Zealots run headfirst into the tanks, because the tanks aren't protected by the bio, and again, those tanks aren't getting very good shots at that point. It is not easy necessarily to take out the tanks from the equation, but it is very possible. This is not the best Protoss fight that I've ever seen. We got more even upgrades than before, and a humongous concave from the Terran. Oh, I said this wouldn't happen, ShoWTimE. Don't do it. It does look like he might just have too much army with, oh, so many charge lots coming in. He's working off of 26 gateways. What is that? How does he have, what? 26? That is an insane number of gateways, y'all. Good lord. Well, that actually ended up being, as far as the direct battle, I think that was actually a win for the Terran. But it, you know, no, because ShoWTimE has 7 bases, double robo, 26 gateways, and just remaxes instantly. Oh my god. Ugh. All right. But that was a pretty decent battle for the Terran. They were down an upgrade, but they had big concave, tanks well positioned, blasting away, Vikings charging on those Colossus, and it was, I think it was just the surplus of Zealots that can get warped in that just ShoWTimE could always rely on. So actually, as GuMiHo thinks that he's starting to get things out of control once again, he loses his 4th base, has to replace that with the orbital that he built previously. We'll be doing that. We'll see if it works. Disruptors, what are you doing, buddy? Going the wrong way. AI'd pretty easy. I actually love the smart servos. Those Vikings that landed towards the tail end of the battle were helpful. It's still not a great sign for Terrans when you're doing that on your side of the map. That looks pretty desperate, but those really worked out. It did. It's unfortunate, though, that the Vikings aren't actually a true fighting force, because GuMiHo definitely needs something extra here. 3-3 had finished up for the Zealots. Let's just tell it like it is. It's a Zealot-based army, and it was 3-3 versus 2-1 with the entire army out of position. And again, GuMiHo is depending a lot on those tanks to cover him against ShoWTimE's map control, and that works out really well until there's just too thin of a bio army. It's not in the right position, it's too thin of a guard, and then the tanks get jumped on by 26 warp bins of Zealots at a time. What stops that? Not tanks, is what I'll tell you. Not tanks. EMP, we don't mind. Marines appropriately behind Marauders, that can work, but not tanks. And ShoWTimE played that, I'm not going to say to perfection, but that seemed like a game that ShoWTimE just, like, hugs near his heart, and he's like, oh, I got to do whatever I wanted. Game 3 is going to be on Dynasty. Bottom left, it is ShoWTimE. Top right, it is GuMiHo. And GuMiHo seems a little outmatched right now. I know things will turn around, because frankly, I have been a little spoiled. So that this game will not be a 4-0. I'm going to go ahead and tell you guys that. The series will not be a 4-0. That much I know. Like I said previously, though, I'm actually not certain who won. Despite this being a week and a half old replay. People talked a lot about it. I managed to make it confusing enough for me that I'm not sure. And that's how I like it. But if I didn't know it didn't end up being a 4-0, I would be calling a 4-0 right here. I'd be like, ooh, this is tough stuff. Like, GuMiHo does not look comfortable versus ShoWTimE. And I'm not really sure why, except that I think that he's uncomfortable versus Protoss in general. There's a couple of Protoss games, you know, and Amp Blue's here mentioning the last time they faced it was pretty good. That GuMiHo looks totally fine. He looks like any other Korean Terran and is very scary to deal with. But there are a decent amount of games that I get to cast of him in which he just looks like a different player versus Protoss than versus Terran or Zerg. And so, I can't believe it's ShoWTimE that makes him uncomfortable. I think it's just Protoss in general and how to handle them. And now, the previous maps were pretty straightforward, but we are on a now not straightforward map. It is a weird one for sure. You got the gold bases in the back and a Rich Vespian Geyser that we've seen plenty of even Protosses, although not maybe in this matchup. Take the Nexus on the backside. Take the Rich Vespian Geyser as well. And we see the relatively common natural actually put down in the supposed location. It's still vulnerable to anything that's a ranged unit, but we do see that. ShoWTimE is not going to do it this game. He's going to take the natural. And I do think we've seen more development on Dynasty as it's played in the map pool, initially the weird players took to it like a fish in water. They were like, ooh, let me take this back base. And then the guys are going to find out because they're all so confused about this new base. Well, now everyone knows what to check for and the pitfalls of this map. So it seems like in general, a lot of people are like, maybe not this base first. Maybe not. A Terran does usually get the benefit of such a arrangement since they're the ones with all units are arranged for Terran except the SCV. So that's pretty nice for them. And while Protoss, I mean, they got charge lots. They're also ranged a lot. A bunker really could do a lot here. A bunker right here, if you were really worried they're going to aggress, can help a ton. So if you do want to try and take advantage of this weird position the Terran has put themselves in as ShoWTimE, we typically see an actual dedication, so a proxy gate of some type alongside very intense micro battles. Right now, neither player really in the know. ShoWTimE's going to play it rather safe with the shield battery coming down immediately. He has seen that it is a factory expand. He got in there, saw the double gas in the factory. And that should cause some alarm. That should cause you to get a shield battery, let's say, at the very least. Just for any amount of things that can come from that 111. Which it also could have literally been 111, no command center. So, not likely, but it can happen, and GuMiHo is often an odder player. We are going to get a Banshee from him, which in terms of this matchup, I think is really as odd as GuMiHo gets nowadays. I have not seen him do any type of proxy battlecruisers in a long time versus Protoss. Perhaps if Dasani Station. Is that what it was called? Perhaps if that map comes back. Isn't Dasani a water bottle company? It sounded something like that, trust me. Then maybe GuMiHo would bring that type of a strategy back. But nah, this time around, the most we're getting is a Banshee, which is still odd enough that Protoss players do get tripped up by this. If they don't scout it, they don't scout it. It can pull them out of position. It can be a part of a main fight. And then that gets really weird as well. It's a lot to do with whether or not ShoWTimE picks up on this potential. Dasan Station, thank you. It's very close to the water bottle company. I think I'm waiting apprehensively to see whether or not GuMiHo actually pushes with this. ShoWTimE, hey, is actually 4-gating. Missed on the actual 4 gates producing on the building tab because it's 2 and then 1's completed but not a warp gate. Ugh, math is hard. Before gating it up, Warp Prism is completed, and the 4-gate is going to go, you guessed it, right for the gold base. Not a huge surprise here. What is maybe a bit of a surprise is that GuMiHo didn't bother with a bunker. And oh god, the timing! No! GuMiHo! Banshee at least has cloak, but that's not a good sign. The tank gets taken down. That was a very bold blink in. That was a hero-esque blink, but I liked it. Still not the best micro on the Warp Prism, though. I'm being very, very, very harsh, but I think you gotta be. There are some possible Stalker saves, again, there with the Warp Prism that are simply not happening. It could have been, I believe, even only 2 Stalkers lost, because I think he could have saved 2 here, and he could have saved 1 absolutely right here. So that kind of sucks. The shield battery did help against the Banshee, thankfully. That was put in the main base. 1 in the natural also would have covered a portion of the probes. But the Banshees, so far, not the most amazing, but they are alive. ShoWTimE, I liked seeing some aggression out of him with the blink on the tank, but it is arguable that that was the right call. Alternatively, the tank saves the SCVs from harassment, but then ShoWTimE maybe waits for an additional warp in, then blinks, and maybe that would have been better. Maybe. But the downside of this build on this map, I would say, is that it's not particularly abusive to multiple locations. One of the strengths of a 4-gate, like a Blinkstalker build, or Reapers as well, when it comes to like a 3-Rax Reaper or something, is the ability to harass multiple locations with ease, because then they don't know where to put their defensive units. That usually puts a little more pepper on these builds. But if it's a situation in which, there's a very obviously vulnerable spot, You put your defenses there, and then getting anywhere else, even with a Warp Prism and Blink, kind of still puts you into the army. It's not that amazing looking. So this is a successful distraction in the main. It's also killing the SCVs, but it's not just the distraction that causes that tank to go down. It's because so much of GuMiHo's army decided to go for a bit of a risky play here, right into that third base. Main base is being harassed by the Banshee as well, so you have multiple probes and SCVs going down. But much, much, much worse that this Nexus is a goner. ShoWTimE, identifying that his army is not strong enough to save it, just chooses to stay in the natural. There's not much else that he could have done. It actually would have been worse for him to try and save that than lose his army and lose the game. He might still lose the game here because losing that third Nexus is kind of unforgivable, but maybe he can bring this back. Warp Prism trying its best in the main base to do extra little bits of damage to make up for the 14 probes. 22 SCVs have gone down, so they've kind of already been harassing workers nonstop. But for GuMiHo, I think the most recent round of trades went a little bit better for him. Warp Prism also now under attack. Stalkers should be fine. This actually is definitely something he can escape from. And the Warp Prism is tasked with harassing, but also keeping track on the army. Observer is on the other side. This will eventually become a pathway, but the main pathway is covered by an observer. And that's not the main pathway. That is a very risky thing to do against the building Stalker army on the front lines. Hey, fortunately doesn't lose the Medivacs. Loses one. And that one Stalker getting blasted for it, I think, is a fair trade. ShoWTimE actually choosing to be aggressive despite being in the worst position. Now, for him, it's kind of hard to call exactly how this game goes, but I think he knows that he's actually got to do something. That's why he's out here. And it's not just desperation. It's generally a good idea. When the Terran is still choked up in their own ramps, this is when the Protoss army has a chance. They got Force Fields, they got Colossus, singular. And so that will take advantage. But eventually, even with the SimCity and the map helping ShoWTimE on the offense, eventually the Terran army is just better. It's got +1, it's 20 supply up, it's got Marauders, it's got tanks. He's still building tanks. So the Colossus isn't nearly as scary as it could be to someone who was, for instance, trying to now build Vikings and is, building Widowmines instead of tanks. So the supplies are very similar. GuMiHo might have had a good trade on the workers at a time, but ShoWTimE has actually replaced it. GuMiHo has not. Whew, that Warp Prism almost went down. So ShoWTimE has 12 more workers. Very nice position for a Protoss to be in. Third base is back up, and GuMiHo, his army is still better. But he now has to run all the way across the map to get this done, and that gives ShoWTimE a lot of time to maybe shave off a couple of units, to set up a run-by, and of course set up the stack defenses back at home. However, this gets a little awkward. It seems that both players losing track of each other's armies. That probe finally seeing the incoming Terran. What is ShoWTimE's plan? He was already so damn close to his opponent's base that he could have initiated a full-on base trade. But he decides to recall back home. Can only recall so much. Disruptor's going to try and buy some time. I think it already shot, actually. So instead, well, it doesn't die, so make it a second one. Some Vikings going way too far forward there, wasting their lives. There's the SCVs, pulling the boys. GuMiHo with the last attempt to stop this from being a 3-0. Stalkers blink aggressively on top of the tanks. Zealots getting a lot of shots here, but the Colossus are not burning through the bio hard enough. No Guardian Shield either. The shield battery only activated on the right side. Nothing on the left to help out. And GuMiHo's SCV pool might have just done the trick. ShoWTimE thought he had enough to handle that. That's why he took the battle, I think, in such a forward position. Didn't want those tanks to be allowed to be sieged up and continue siege hopping forward either, so that's why he tried to take it there, but that did not work out. The Colossus just could not burn through the bio fast enough. Even though the bio was a little clumped up, even though the Medivacs are not that numerous in number, it was just enough. And GuMiHo stops this from being a 3-0 on his last life. Instead, he's got a game on his side, and now 2-1 in a best-of-7. In the bottom left of Alcyone, he gets a point on the board. Now has 2 lives still to his name. He is GuMiHo. And in the top right, it is ShoWTimE, who still leads the series 2-1. Still can throw in a wacky build should he want to, but it's ShoWTimE, so don't expect it. And he did win those first 2 games in a super solid fashion. Last game did get weird. The Banshees, I think, did successfully cause the game to go into disarray. ShoWTimE couldn't precisely do his 4-gate. He could do it more than the first game, but still, it got a little weird with the Banshees. It gets a little weird with the position of the tank and the defense of the mineral lines. It looks really abusive, but then the Terran knows that it's abusive, so they're going to be extra prepared for that. It looked initially good for ShoWTimE, killing the Banshee, but Cloak saved the day. Then it looked good for ShoWTimE again towards the end, I would say. I think he was in a position that he could have held against the SCV pool, but I'm not saying it was easy, and I'm not saying that it was an obvious choice, because it definitely wasn't. I also was split 50-50, casting the battle, wondering who was going to win that. But at a certain time, it's just clearly there's still too many Terran units alive. It just becomes very clear, and then everything just comes together, and you're like, oh my god, that Terran army is still so gigantic. But it could be argued that if ShoWTimE had instead, well, one, tracked the army, that was the first problem. He was forced into a last-second defense when ideally he would have been there tracking the army using his Colossus to shave off SCVs, maybe even taking a battle more on GuMiHo's side of the map. That would maybe not work out for him, but then he has time to retreat and rebuild, and he's the one that, time is on his side. So there were other options. Even down to how he took the battle, he took it very offensively, thinking he could jump on top of it, and that would be his best bet. Maybe if he had backed up into his natural, backed up into his third, waited for the tanks to siege hop, and then jumped, maybe that would have been better. It's a hard thing to call. And certainly in the midst of a game. But ShoWTimE did, unfortunately, end up losing. Not going to get that solid 3-0. But even in that last game, despite how wacky it got because of the way that GuMiHo played it, I still felt like ShoWTimE was a stronger-looking player. And GuMiHo, not going to say that he depended on tricks. But, he did do an all-in. And that is probably one of the, if not the best ways to get back into a momentum-less series as a player. Like, GuMiHo had no momentum. And now he's at least stopped ShoWTimE's. If it works. If it doesn't work, then you look silly and everyone is like, why would you risk it? No. Can't play a perfect game of StarCraft 2 to save your life. It's impossible. 2 Reaper opener is a little interesting. You got a Cyclone coming along as well. Command Center built on location this time. I feel like it's already like the slightest, tiniest sign that GuMiHo feels a little better about this series. But I'll take it. ShoWTimE, he's done 2 4-gates in this series. I mean, if I'm going to pretend to put blame on GuMiHo all-inning, that's why he won, guys. Ugh. Then I have to also note that ShoWTimE is playing a rather aggressive, fairly dedicated style, let's say. 4-gate does need to do damage unless your name is Max Pax, and then even then, like, you should be able to do something. So ShoWTimE, when he plays a 4-gate, he is saying I need to do something with that 4-gate before I enter into my macro phase, which we know that he's still the most comfortable with. He's really done a lot to make himself a more well-rounded player, but you think of ShoWTimE, you think of macro, 100%. And he had game 2, where he was just pure macro. That looked the most convincing. Because he played pure macro, and GuMiHo tried to do Terran things, and then just failed kind of at every single time he tried. So for ShoWTimE, if I was his coach, and I'd be a terrible coach, so please don't hire me to ever coach ShoWTimE, I'd be like, well, maybe don't 4-gate. And a 3-gate might actually be that kind of perfect in-between, because not only does it help you against a potentially aggressive GuMiHo, which, hey, he can be aggressive in the early game, and that's kind of what he's doing here, but it can also technically give you the option of still being a little aggressive with the Stalkers, if that's something you really thought would work, if, like, you're convinced that GuMiHo might be a little weak to the early game Stalkers. In this case, it is just a beautiful decision because GuMiHo is playing a little aggressive. So ShoWTimE actually didn't see this, but Alcyone might be a popular map for this type of push. I think it is. And so he does seem awfully prepared for it. He's actually 2-basing this entire time as he goes up to a Robotics Bay, gets an Immortal before that Nexus, and is playing it as safe as he should, now that he knows exactly what it is as well. He got that Zelnaga and saw what was going on. So this does interrupt his perfect macro. But you gotta, when you see this army building up, it's not stam, it's not combat shields. If combat shields had finished and it was seen, this actually could have been a combat shield like 3-1, except there's a medevac. So basically, ShoWTimE knows this is a still intimidating army, but it's not an all-in army. And appropriate defense, yes, but also making sure to balance the macro as well. You can't over-defend against this, or you'll also be in trouble. Tanks are out of the range of the shield battery nexus, which is kind of the first good thing. You want them sieging up far away from that. 2 immortals now. Guardian shield could happen. Little pop on the immortal shield. A good start for GuMiHo, who actually will have stim for this. It's taken him a while to get even halfway across the map. But he does get here and then still has such a powerful position without those charge lots, charge only just beginning, that the tanks don't really have to move. Well, as soon as they decide to move, that's when ShoWTimE starts to move in. That was a little sketch. I mean, you can't stay here indefinitely, of course, but for now, GuMiHo's tanks are really protecting his army on the offense. It's like a defensive position for an offensive army. And Stim actually finished, officially. This is something that ShoWTimE really has to think long and hard about how he tackles. Because if he was thinking, okay, the tanks are on siege, the Marines don't have Stim, let's rush in, and then the Stim happens, he might have made a huge mistake. But he doesn't move in. He has a Colossus now. His charge is going to finish as well, and I would actually say that was actually a very wise minute-and-a-half StarCraft 2 moment. Like, you just got to respect that both players respected each other and knew the dangers of overcommitting on both sides. 4 bases now for ShoWTimE as GuMiHo was planting his third on location. He's been consistent about that. He saved all of his tanks and is continuing with this tank style. And I talked about how I really don't think GuMiHo is going to be weirded out by ShoWTimE's style. That it seems incredibly unlikely to me. But it is possible that ShoWTimE can be weirded out by the style that GuMiHo is playing, which is not incredibly crazy. But it is different. Tank-heavy TDP, it's different. You know, it has its downsides. I think it is generally seen as not being as good because so few Terrans really consistently do this. But it also has its upsides. And you know, one of the upsides is that it is a different way to play. And sometimes people are really bad at being able to set up the proper engagement for these tanks. It sounds easy enough. Just get those zealots on the backside. What's the problem? Of course, it's not that easy. And ShoWTimE knows that at the tank-based army here, that's 6 tanks about to siege up his Nexus, him being on the defense utterly and entirely is not necessarily ideal. Like, the more that he's on the defensive, the more that he's choked into his own SimCity, the more that these tanks are going to be absolutely brutal. Zealots could have set up for a surround, decide to go for a run-by. That actually won't be too bad for them. I was going to say, yeah, that's not too bad. +1 is done for the bio, but it's mostly Marauders, which simply don't kill Zealots that fast. So at the very least, that's going to take a lot of time. Sees the opportunity as the tanks are not protected on the front side, but not enough Zealots, really. They're getting choked up. I guess the Immortals are target firing as they should. That's the most important thing. And the Colossus also were split there. Very important. And GuMiHo taps out. 3 bases still set up. But his reinforcements had been killed by the Zealots as he was forced to look elsewhere, so he stopped microing them. And then he knew that the attack would be coming swiftly onto his side of the map with 3 Colossus still alive, 3 Colossus, 2 Immortals, heavy number of Stalkers. All you're missing is a Warp Prism and a mass amount of charge lots. +1 is going to finish. There is absolutely everything needed to tap out of the game here. GuMiHo, totally right to do so. But I'm a little surprised at how easy that was. I thought that'd be a little more challenging. But I think 2 things really happened. A little highlight in slow motion here. In a second. So, I would say the first thing that happened with the Zealots were a successful distraction. GuMiHo, I love GuMiHo. I freaking love him. But his mechanics can often be one of his worst features. And I don't think that's been affecting him. Well, no, 900 minerals. Maybe it is. His micro isn't necessarily what we know him for. You know, he can. And I think when he is playing his absolute best StarCraft, then he's good in all departments. And he's clever, and he's fun to watch. But, you know, only if he's playing his absolute best. So I think, you know, this type of multitasking demand from GuMiHo is actually a little too much for him a lot of the time. But it's also just a good maneuver against any Terran. Any Terran forced to be distracted here is better. So in that distraction, GuMiHo, I'd say, is clearly not looking at his army. Yeah. I think I'm on his... Oh, no. Okay. Let me try that again. Sometimes camera breaks. Like, for instance, camera is broken for me every single replay. It's zoomed in too much when I go to a player point of view. I don't know why. Gives me claustrophobia. Don't like it. Weirdly enough, he does try to position his army in a way that he can respond instantaneously with it. And he does respond pretty quickly, actually. That sim was very quick. Nonetheless, the other thing that I wanted to point out was that the Colossus micro is actually pretty cool. You know, Colossus are one of the most made fun of units, I guess. Well, they've basically... They were bullied a lot for the first 2 or 3 years of StarCraft. And then people forgave them and just gave them a pat on the head. They're like, you'll do, Colossus, you'll do. But I think they were made fun of a lot in the early game. In the early stages of StarCraft. Why? Because they are the epitome A-move unit. And back in the day, the amount of Idra games where he just, like, couldn't win against Colossus was kind of hilarious. You might be right. This might be the normal zoom. I feel like it's just like a little bit too in. I don't know. Sometimes like I'm going crazy. But anyways. But even though Colossus are kind of a perfect A-move unit, you know, there's 2 things that Colossus do that you can't A-move them. Attack a planetary and hope that they redirect their attention to a bio army. They don't do it. And then 2, they clump up. Like a Protoss army is designed to clump up. And it can be all too easy to focus on like where your stalkers aren't clumped up, where your immortals are focus firing, where your charge lots are trying to get a concave. But in this case, he actually made sure that his Colossus were kind of split. And then the other thing is that the tank's going down very, very quickly. So it's not because Gumi wasn't paying attention. He actually was very quick here in this game. Nonetheless, 1 tank gets obliterated off the bat. 2nd tank gets obliterated off the bat. That does deplete the Zealots, and I was worried about that, but... It actually also looks like the tanks might have refocus fired, because they were focus firing that guy, and then they started attacking this guy. Not that I think 1 Colossus less would actually have saved his life. 2 Colossus less also would not have saved his life. He really needed more on the front lines. The potential final game is going to be on Crimson Court. In the top right, we do have ShoWTimE. And in the bottom left, it is GuMiHo, who is now on his last life. The game he won, arguably still could have been won by ShoWTimE, but it was difficult because GuMiHo SEV all-in. And that, you know, that sometimes does the trick. It's not like a 2 racks, which I've never seen that build lose, but the SEV pull can be a very good maneuver. So it was. That's why GuMiHo is not yet out of the tournament, but overall, ShoWTimE with a far more convincing series. 3-1, moving on to another maybe odd map, but not nearly as odd as map 3, which is where GuMiHo won. I mean, really, I can't really call this map odd. The only thing that's even unique about it is that you do have the gold minerals off to the right. You can then take this space instead. Another thing that might make it a little scarier of a map, though, even though it's not all that unique and different and weird, is that it's short. The way that you expand kind of encourages you to expand towards each other, and that can often make a Protoss very wary. They're not incapable of being the aggressor, first and foremost. They can proxy gate, they can 4-gate, they can even the 3-gate without Twilight Council that Max Pax used to do a lot. Like he doesn't do it that much anymore. You know, all good things. But nonetheless, when you get to mid-game, let's say. Let's say you get the mid-game. The Terran player being able to reinforce a little bit quicker, especially if it's going to be tank-based again. Those tanks getting just a little bit of reinforcements could be a real game changer. It'd be kind of scary for the Protoss player. You also do have an entire side of the map that is unpathable for your ground units. So unless you want to pick up your medevac and send your units over here, you know, Warp Prism coming in from that side can be very, very annoying. I guess it'd be... ShoWTimE seems like playing a more macro-focused approach has worked out for him. Last game he 3-gated, it just ended up being very appropriate, but it was a defensive one. He didn't use it to go and aggress, and I think that was fine. I think on a map like this, with GuMiHo's trying to do, although GuMiHo is... Yeah, with what it, you know, maybe he's trying to do more early game aggression. ShoWTimE might do a 3-gate again. He is going to grab that shield battery. Twilight Council is on the way. No change, by the way, on Twilight Council versus anything else. For a while, ShoWTimE was one of the most likely Protoss players to go, I think, into Oracle than Blinkstalker. I just remember there was a phase where he did that almost every single game, actually. So literally one Oracle into Blinkstalker. And there's some good reasons to do that, but it has seemed to really have fallen out of favor. And then there's also a Phoenix opener that goes into Colossus, which I think is totally fine, but maybe not the one that he wants to do on this map. And maybe just in general, not what he feels the most confident in at the time that this was played. His Twilight Council has been working out for him, as the score dictates. Little Reaper Cyclone action yet again, like last game. This might be the precursor to the tank, but it actually is not? Question mark? You might have gotten a Wood of Mine last game and I just didn't pay attention. Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, GuMiHo seems to be a tank boy this series, but then second of all, this was a very similar opener to the last game, which ultimately did not go in GuMiHo's favor, but you give him a different position, especially on some of these cliffs that I'm looking at, and you give ShoWTimE a little more hubbub in the early game, a little more of like, hey, you gotta be careful, you gotta watch out, you lost a couple of probes, something and so on. And this could actually be a fairly scary push. Shorter map, too. Just a 3-second difference between maps can mean a lot for a dedicated push. Double Wood of Mine drop. Very, 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 very normal. In fact, it's almost so normal, it's abnormal. Oh my god. Oh no! I was just joking! Okay. I was worried that it is so normal. It is a factory expand one, so it hits pretty fast, but nonetheless, this is something that ShoWTimE should be very used to. Little micro and counter micro as you do. Medevac did go down, and that means that overall, that was an extremely unsuccessful Wood of Mine drop. These things aren't necessarily supposed to be killing 20 probes, but they at the very least want to survive. The Wood of Mines would like to have a second shot. If not that, then at least they're in the medevac waiting for another opportunity to run in, say when you actually push on the front lines. That no longer exists. So, pretty big failure. ShoWTimE's Observer is going to see the tanks are sieging up at home with the army building there and the production infrastructure looking as normal as ever, which means that he has some time to not worry about being directly attacked. So a Liberator coming in at this point would just be way too easy for him to take care of. GuMiHo should probably keep that in his pocket for when he actually pushes out, and at least he has some type of wombo combo. He could have had a triple combo if the Wood of Mine drop was hanging over here, but it is the game of StarCraft and it is difficult. So the Observer giving ShoWTimE, I would say, a lot of confidence. Means that he really does not have to warp in a ton of units because he doesn't know what the hell is happening. But at this time, we have a push. Stim is nowhere near completion. Combat Shields is nowhere near completion. +1 is not even halfway done. And yet, the simple move-outs can scare ShoWTimE into producing more units. That might his economy. For instance, if he stops building probes right now, and then GuMiHo actually ends up backing away. It's a little bit of that, like, you know, Zerg kind of build. You know, they want to get their economy, then build their army in an ideal situation. Protoss have a little bit of that as well. This Observer will get scanned. Oh, no! That was a probe. So, well, at least it wasn't 2 observers to 1 scan like I thought it was. Okay. 1 probe and an observer is a little awkward. Liberator did siege up, but so far not getting very much damage done. No focus fire on the probes either. Wants to try and kill a stalker. So far, so good on ShoWTimE's Blink Micro or just regular Micro. And that was fine. So we did have a stop in the probe production to compensate, it looks like, for the little move out there. And I'm pretty sure that's exactly what GuMiHo wanted. There's just not much else that I could see that doing. Maybe catching stalkers that were being too aggressive and not paid attention to, I guess. Seems unlikely. Especially because ShoWTimE has really not made all that many stalkers, and he's placing them very defensively, too. He's not running forward with them trying to kill a medevac. And ShoWTimE is giving himself a very solid macro game, and again, he won the last straight-up macro game that they played. Again, the 4-probe hallucination being sent every which way. Instead of the 1 attack path being scouted by a Phoenix hallucination, you instead get potentially up to 4 attack paths scouted. That seems like good math to me. But we really don't see it all that often. And certainly if it comes down to wanting to know what is in their base, then probes are useless. But honestly, after the 5 racks and 3rd CC is down, I don't know exactly if there's anything else that you would, well, I mean, you know, there's still stuff to scout, obviously, but I'm thinking of, like, really important, devastating type of technology being hidden in the main and its EVP. No, I can't, you know, like, okay, are they building Widow Mines or tanks? Okay, that would be a scout. Are they already building Vikings? That would be, I guess, a scout. Do they already have a Ghost Academy? That would be a scout. How good is their defense infrastructure would also be a scout. So seeing, like, only 1 missile turret, you go, okay, I'll put my Warp Prism in through this angle. By the way, that SAV is stuck. I love when that happens to pro gamers. And yes, a 4th base versus an SEV pool would be the biggest scout necessary. But perhaps a probe scout also would see that. This really is just building up to 4 bases. ShoWTimE already on his in the middle of the map, so he feels comfortable enough taking the middle, going towards his opponent. And considering this has not really been a very action-packed TVP, I could see this is like totally actually in his favor to do so. You still have the high ground, obviously. You still have a choke, a ramp to protect yourself, so there's some upsides taking the closer base to your opponent. But then I'm looking at these ledges with the tanks, and that does scare me a little bit. And if this was a more back and forth, first it was a Widow Mine drop into a very swift double drop into a 2 army left-right type of engagement. Maybe this base would be a little sketch to take. But then actually, since this map is so skinny and you have the left side entirely blocked off, unless you unblock it, I guess the left-right 2 army type of battle doesn't work out as well. Warp Prism did seem to thread the needle appropriately. It didn't really find any success, however, as the army was prepared. ShoWTimE with a almost 20 army supply lead. He equal upgrades as well. But the tanks will stop him from taking a fight all willy-nilly like. And that Aaron is also clearly prepared. Ideally, if you ever start a fight, it's when your opponent's not paying attention. Speaking of which, these Vikings might have been looking to catch those Colossus, and if that hallucination didn't see it, it's possible they would have gotten a pot shot off and survived to tell the tale. ShoWTimE really setting himself up for an amazing late game. Pylons coming down, 5 bases almost ready to go. Has a few more probes than his opponent, but GuMiHo also getting finally his 4th base. I mean, it's really not abnormal for Terrans to expand a little slower here. Finally on a double forge as well for the Protoss player. Going up to 15. Nope, make that 17 gateways. And Warp Prism already having been remade. I guess the last one did die. Yeah. GuMiHo not kidding around on the Warp Prism defense and his natural at the very least. He's got that covered. We are certainly down to a situation in which anything can happen. Who takes the better battle is absolutely the question. GuMiHo, you know, in times before, in the games before, when he's gotten up to 4 bases maxed out, it's been on a real struggle bus to do that. You know, like there was a lot of hiccups leading to this, in which, and I don't even think he was maxed out in the game 2 that I'm thinking of. Like, yeah, he could get to a 4th base, and he even kind of got to a 5th, but things were already heavily in ShoWTimE's favor. He got to his late game maxed out perfect army way faster than GuMiHo did. And in this game, I feel like they actually match each other a little bit, so it's just who takes the better battle. 7th? 6th base? Will it get canceled? I'm not even sure where you take a 7th. I guess over here at ShoWTimE? No. No, you take it over here. You already have pylons over here. Yeah, it's kind of weird, though. It just seems like it's moving closer to your opponent. There's not that many bases on this map, so that's what it is. Heyo! One of the short, skinny maps in the map pool is the one where we actually get our latest PvP yet. I assume so anyway. It's only 12.5, but both players are going to have a really difficult time actually killing each other, I would think. So, particularly when the Terran player throws down 2 additional starports and a fusion core all at once, it does seem to really signify a please wait for me to get to my liberators, which is going to take 2 minutes. Whether that's being used defensively or offensively. If GuMiHo wants to wait for those, he's waiting a while. He actually is maxed out, though, so he at the very least has to get rid of some army. Double drop, once again, cancels that 6th base. So far, a pretty effective double drop, because it's also alive, too. ShoWTimE finally fed up with it, actually sends a decent amount of army back home. He actually sends all of his Colossus. Now, this is, I would say, kind of just a, like, how good are they on the front lines anymore maneuver, rather than he really thinks 3 Colossus are necessary to deal with those 2 medevacs. But it does seem like a lot of army away from the front. Okay, yeah, the Colossus do come back. I guess he was really scared of it. Well, that timing did not work out then, did it? Oh no, the Colossus are now away. That is so much production in the main. What do you even target fire? The pylons, I guess. This will be cleaned up because ShoWTimE has plenty of money, but now his own SimCity works against him. I guess that's the other reason the Colossus came back, is that he might have realized that. Needed some range there to help out. Ultimately, I think an inconsequential moment there, like for both players. GuMiHo wanted to get rid of some supply, and ShoWTimE couldn't have really taken devastating damage of that. Pretty sure. There's a chance that he is completely maxed out in the front lines and thus cannot reinforce. That does happen to the professionals, but not in that case. Colossus are looking more and more awkward. A couple of ravines here that the Vikings can take advantage of. EMPs have already scattered around the Protoss army, and yet ShoWTimE would like to go for it. Realizing that might not work out super well. Tanks are sieged. Bio is ready. 3-3 on the Terran versus just, well, actually 3-2-1 on the Protoss, so I guess it's actually even. But the ship weapons +2 is 75% done, and we know how devastating that is. Even though the Liberators now have less range with the advanced ballistics, they will still one-shot a Stalker that is EMP'd. Right? That didn't change. Did I miss a memo? They're still pretty powerful. Bio actually taking care of some Zealot run-bys really nicely. That was a good amount to send over that direction without taking enough from the front lines. And this is also where Liberators are basically necessary. Because it's kind of more on the Protoss decision of how much they throw at you than it is the Terran capable of realizing how much is being thrown at them. Like, from the right side, there could be 10 Zealots, there could be 30. You don't know. The Liberators kind of help to cover that just, frankly, impossible scout. Like, you can't be constantly scouting what type of army is coming what direction. Sensor towers are your best thing, right? That they will tell you if that is a large blob or a small blob. And so they are pretty good, and I'm glad to see that GuMiHo has not skimped on the sensor towers, even losing one there, and he basically has a backup. The Liberator is really necessary to safeguard you against further harassment, as the Protoss does tend to take control in this situation. It's not like they're in the lead because of the way that they're controlling the map, but they are controlling the map. And if you don't have Liberators to help out, if you don't have a kind of consolidated base structure because of the map, maybe the map has your 6th base way out here, then you're going to be in some trouble. ShoWTimE really trying to find the army out of position, but the map is kind of playing to that for the Terran so far. GuMiHo actually able to respond to all of the remaneuvering from the Protoss because A, sensor towers, and B, you're actually not that spread out, particularly if you mined out the gold base. And since he's going to put a planetary there again anyway, I would like him to mine on this gold base, but whatever. That base not canceled. That was killed. GuMiHo losing some money, but has 3,000 minerals in the bank. Liberators aplenty, sieging up. Good lord. We are at 9 Liberators. And that is a lot of freedom circles to look at. GuMiHo not going to be pushed aside there. He's like, no, I'm going to get this command center down. I will not be stopped. Really wants the SimCity on his side. Because with the bio, it's not necessarily the best SimCity for him as he runs into Disruptors and Colossus potentially. But for the Liberators, hell yeah, give me a choke. Oh yeah. Oh yes. Oh yes. 5 more Liberators on the way. Gonna make a total of 14. That will completely max out GuMiHo as well. Still trying to keep a decent amount of bio. ShoWTimE knows that this is going to be an elongated battle. He won't just win swiftly now that the Liberator count is so high, although he is trying his best to get decent battles. His real plan, nice Disruptor usage on the Planetary, but maybe a little bit too much, actually. The bio realizes that Disruptors no longer have shots, and that is GuMiHo seizing the opportunity. Stalkers will try and obliterate the Liberators. This can't do it fast enough. There's not enough Stalkers. ShoWTimE's supply plummets. Good on ShoWTimE. Sorry, good on GuMiHo to recognize that. He basically saw that this was a full committal on killing the Planetary. It was already unsieging his Liberators to advance forward, given the opportunity. And was able to actually really strike when the iron was hot. And he's not going to stop yet. He is going to take full advantage of this momentum before ShoWTimE can fully remax. I mean, he's got bank. But there's also this issue of, what are you going to do, remax with charge lots against the oncoming Liberator army? Probably not. The best you could do with the charge lot remax is, yes, exactly this, base trade. And honestly, against Liberators that are already sieged up on your army and on your bases, yeah, the best thing you can do is freaking run away from them. Absolutely. ShoWTimE does have a Stargate, so he could bust out a Void Ray or two, I suppose, but he clearly was not thinking he would have to move on to an actual Stargate game. He thought he might be able to overwhelm GuMiHo with enough army. But he over-committed to the Planetary. Seems to really be the problem here. Unfortunately, no high ground to see what could be protecting the Liberator. Oh, I guess there's a tank and a Planetary. Yeah, those Liberators are pointing the wrong direction, but not going to be able to take advantage of that. SCVs have gone down. Probes have gone down. Nexus have died. Overall, ShoWTimE still, however, on 5, almost 6 bases. They're just not mining, and some of them are the healthier ones, too. He actually lost his unhealthy bases. And if you are going to choose, you're going to choose those to die. He's the one with 64 probes, where GuMiHo has been slapped down to 33 SCVs. But GuMiHo does also have 3 orbitals, and, well, his Planetaries did get back up and running. GuMiHo with that 5th base actually mining is pretty big news. The Zelt's going to try and stop that. While ShoWTimE also tries to deal with the incoming Liberator army. GuMiHo's supply just so much better than ShoWTimE's. He did not rebuild those SCVs. He just built more army. When he is maxed out, there we go. He's going to be at 165 army supply. This is a simple 108 from ShoWTimE, and that might be okay. Oh, God, if you play it like a Zerg, if you plan on remaxing after a battle, but ShoWTimE at this point cannot remax. He's actually purely dependent on these Disruptors getting fantastic hits, and that one actually even didn't get the center of the army. It actually looked like ShoWTimE anticipated GuMiHo running away, so let it kind of clip the back end of the Terran. Don't really blame him. That's usually what Terrans do, run away from Disruptor. Planetary once again going to be the focus here, but maybe it shouldn't be. The Zealots getting distracted as the Stalkers. Oh my God, they just blinked into the slaughter. I mean, yes, there was more reinforcements coming than ShoWTimE realized, but those Zealots did not do their jobs as the defenders of the Stalkers. They're the ones supposed to be tanking all those shots, and the Stalkers did instead. The Zealots did successfully kill the Planetary, but is that really the best news right now? ShoWTimE is currently less than half the supply. Fixes it a little bit. But this is going to be a tough game for ShoWTimE. In fact, I think it might be unwinnable at this point. GuMiHo just needs to make sure not to let this game go via like a weird base trade, I would say. And actually, as ShoWTimE, I guess he still has hope that he might be able to recover in a really usual way. You know, just, you know, do the hard work, roll up your sleeves, get your bases back to mining, and rebuild your army, and prepare to throw army after army into a superior Terran force. It can work. It's just after a devastating blow to your economy is probably one of the most difficult ways for it to work. The other way, that's not any less difficult, but still, the other way would actually be try and initiate a base trade, I guess. Hope that they move out, and then be ready for an actual base race. Now, if ShoWTimE was ever planning on doing that, I would love to have seen a Dark Shrine. Since he doesn't have one, I feel like this was not really his ideal plan, and he certainly isn't as well set up for it as he should be. With orbitals potentially going down in the base race, DTs are invaluable. Not to mention, DT Blink can actually be helpful too. Yes, there are some EMPs, but even the EMP number is very, very low. DTs could have legitimately changed the course of this game. ShoWTimE does manage to be back at an even supply to his opponent, but don't forget that his 30 in workers that are not going to be mining very efficiently for very long. Although it is the production and technology that is being taken down, and weirdly enough, ShoWTimE will have his bases mining, no problem, at least this one over here. One Liberator causing issues on the other side. This is going to go into a full-on base race by the looks of things as the probes get pulled in here. Help out, boys! Help! Help! Of course, not really all that useful in helping. The Zealots should be on the melee on the planetary, but I don't think this is the time to go for a direct engagement. You got to go for the actual base race. There's no way you're winning the direct army fight, but the Liberators are already sieged up in the main. And so you can't break that without devastating losses. And this is a game of time. If ShoWTimE were to go for a full-on base race, he would actually have to kill every last building. Instead, he takes the battle. He's trying to come in on the backside with Disruptors. A beautiful idea that's just too late to actually go for it. The Zealots are all gone. The Stalkers are vulnerable, and the Disruptors are now being used to fully escape the engagements. That could have been beautiful. But the Disruptors were just 2-3 seconds too late. The Zealots were all gone. There was no longer a trap. There is no longer a cage for the bio. And the Stalkers are basically paper. Disruptors, again, like I said, now used on a purely defensive angle. Safeguarded the retreat of the Stalkers, which is, of course, good. That's better than any other alternative. But they were meant to go in for a collapse. That would have been so sick that it happened. And it doesn't. GuMiHo still with a heavier army supply, still with a lot of Liberators. He has 8 because the ones in the main base are now going on a harassment mission. I'm not going to let you mine whatsoever. ShoWTimE might have lost his natural, but his main base with all of his production is still intact. He's warping in, you know, 3 Zealots at a time. Even have a cannon. I think he's maybe wary of what the Ghost can do. Plus, I mean, it might just actually be a better use. Well, I mean, they can shoot up, I guess. Okay, he's going to take the engagement. He's going for it. That is a very powerful Terran force. But, oh, the Disruptor doesn't actually go off. The Disruptor doesn't go off. And when it finally does, it's on Zealots. No, that is the opposite of what you want to have happen. ShoWTimE. He almost won the game. If that first Disruptor had actually hit instead of being taken down, that would have killed all of the Terran army. Instead, he lets the last one pop, and it was on 5 Zealots. That is 500 minerals down the drain that ShoWTimE can now not replace as his entire mining is being sieged. This one could have easily been sieged as well. It actually looks like GuMiHo might just be getting to it. He should know that's there. Yeah, I think he's getting to it. No, just kidding. All right, so there's one base mining for ShoWTimE, which feels like it probably shouldn't, but it is. Second base is quote-unquote mining. And we have a long-distance mining scenario happening as well. ShoWTimE with 39 worker advantage here. 40 SCVs to 40 probes to 1 SCV. God, I would have loved a Dark Shrine. Can you imagine a Dark Shrine? There is 1 Ghost. There is 1 EMP. There is 1 scan. Am I wigging? Is that not the solution to all of your problems? The missile turrets are way in the back. I feel like DT would have been huge. Really, really do. And he still technically could have gotten to it, but he's been warping in Zealots nonstop, which almost worked. Now the problem is actually getting them to take a direct engagement, and this is not what GuMiHo is going to let happen. He's going to tackle the Zealots first, the Stalkers next, and then avoid the Disruptors the entire time as well. That is now the ultimate pain in ShoWTimE's butt, is that the only thing that can catch up to the Terran army are the Stalkers. And when the Stalkers are what's kind of forcing the engagement, it usually means they're on the front lines getting shredded. So, like, right there, you know, like, yeah, they don't actually want to be a part of the battle. They want to blink forward, force GuMiHo to stop, and then hope that they miss micros against the Disruptors. Liberators finally have sieged up the entirety of ShoWTimE's mining. And ShoWTimE does not have resources to build another Nexus. Did that get canceled or killed? I thought he was building one there, but maybe I made that up. He certainly was at some point. Not anymore. Stargate actually is being rebuilt. I guess that was in the natural or the third. So he is trying to get to an oracle? An oracle would help. Okay, he canceled the Nexus. Okay. But he still doesn't have enough minerals to get another one. Observer is really key here, giving him advanced information on where the Terran army is. God, if ShoWTimE afforded a Dark Shrine instead of 3 Zealots, God. I know, the chance that it could be found out, maybe GuMiHo goes for the main base, then it gets killed, like... That could certainly happen, but... What is the Stargate for? He built a Stargate. Dark Shrine. No. The only thing I think that would actually be useful is an Oracle. And I'm not saying it wouldn't be. I think it actually would. Not for Revelations. The Observer's kind of doing the job anyway. As more Zealots get killed without taking a real engagement. And GuMiHo just doubled his worker count. 2 workers. Stasis traps. Sorry. So stasis traps. Oracles could actually be very helpful when it comes to stasis traps. They actually might even be helpful. Oh, you know what? He probably got it to deal with the Liberators. And then realized it's not the biggest problem. But now it's just awkward no matter how you slice it. Yeah. Okay, that makes more sense. It is still awkward, though, because that took forever to get. And Liberators were doing some harassment and denying of mining. And now it's like... It's not even being denied. This Phoenix is going to pop up and be like, hey, guys. There's anything for me to do? And you're like, not really. What are you going to do with the Marauder? Feels like ShoWTimE just doesn't even think about Dark Shrines. He hadn't got a Dark Shrine in any of the games, right? Pretty sure that's true. He just does not like a Dark Shrine. And it's very, very unfortunate because there were plenty of times where he was rich. Yes, it was like a Zerg rich where you're planning on rebuilding with that bank. But one little, just in case, Dark Shrine. Or certainly when it was apparent that a base race was your only option. But ShoWTimE either thought that it really wouldn't be worth it, or he actually doesn't encounter these games often enough, recently enough, to think about it. You know, the next time there's a potential base race, I can almost positively say that he will add on a Dark Shrine. Almost. Almost positive, maybe kind of, sort of. But I think that he should. I think if you're going to base race as a Protoss, your initial reaction should be to figure out where the Terran army is, get a Dark Shrine, then go for the base race. But I'm also a pleb. I love the factory going out for a little scouty scout. Better than nothing, considering that GuMiHo is the one that is being out-scouted thanks to this cheeky observer. Stalker is also a little more mobile. They can run forward or blink back and report on what went down there. Over the course of me talking, ShoWTimE has built up another 10 Zealots. That's not bad. The issue, as always, is getting the connections, and that's why we have some sentries also being added in. ShoWTimE with a surplus of gas. Needs to be warping in anything and everything. Also an Archon. I'm not saying an Archon would solve anything here, actually, but, you know, another good use of a Dark Shrine. Archon would be very helpful if this was a slightly smaller base race. If this was a 40 army supply versus 50 situation, I think an Archon would be big, but maybe not here. But anyway, force field, sentries, actually useful here. Observer gets EMP'd and is now out, so I believe ShoWTimE no longer has vision. He also no longer has detection. I don't think that's an issue, though. He did seem mindful of the ghost cloak, so he has a couple of cannons. Also just to help out, obviously, against Liberators, too. They can only see chop forward so much. Stargate depower, but it wasn't doing very much to begin with. Can't wait for that Phoenix to come in hot and save the day. Shield Body Overcharge doing a wonderful job so far, keeping this army alive. You can see that ShoWTimE is terrified of actually taking the engagement. Like, unless those force fields are perfect, and these are not perfect, he's not going to win. Misses the opportunity to try and snipe that medevac as well. At least gets one of them. The weakened one goes down. But the perfect force fields would have been, like, I think an actual, like, 40% of the army detached. You know, the tiny little units on the front lines I don't think are enough of a slice off for what he loses when he takes the engagement. Disruptor only getting one Marauder instead of two. Almost dying as well. Phoenix! 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 Yeah! He came in to help. There's only like one anti-air unit here. Phoenix, you better save this day. I swear to God. I don't think he's going to save the day, you guys. No, an Oracle would have been so good. An Oracle would have had so much pulsar beam. It would have killed the ghost. It would have happened. Oh, ShoWTimE, no. Oh. Yep, he's lost the game. A Void Ray would have been amazing. A Void Ray would have won this game, 100%. It just would have been a very, very weird call to make 5 minutes ago. It would have been a very big brain maneuver to be like, I bet all of his anti-air will die. In the top right of Ghost River, losing a pretty damn close base trade. I wonder how that feels. It is ShoWTimE. And in the top left, barely squeaking out that victory. Now with 2 points on the board, he is GuMiHo. And now that he's winning a couple of games, I feel like this is the time where I will talk nicely about GuMiHo. For anyone who's watched my previous commentaries, you should know that I actually like GuMiHo, right? Like, I think that's... I don't dislike any of our pro gamers in today's environment. Ask me 9 years ago, and I would dodge the question, because there is definitely some pros I prefer not to cast. But, from the beginning of this cast, maybe you'd be like, wow, this chick doesn't... No hope in GuMiHo. I mean, that's kind of true, because he did not have a great performance in Game 1 or Game 2, and third was kind of... It's been questionable for him. I don't think that's wrong to say, but... Yeah, I haven't heard... It doesn't sound like I'm a big fan of him. I am. It's just that his TVP is not what encourages me to believe in TVP. And I think when you're the race of a player, right, there's always going to be a little bit of that bias for multiple reasons. But one of the things that we tend to do, maybe subconsciously, is like people who make us think that something is possible. You know, when the first little doe-eyed baby StarCraft 2 newbie comes into esports and is like, wow... The 4-gate no blink, I'm talking like one base 4-gate, right, is so impossible to beat. I just don't understand it. And then they watch a Terran player defend that. They're going to be like, wow, that was awesome. I really appreciate it. Like, that's how you... Okay, no, like, oh, this guy must be so good. He defeated the thing that I thought wasn't good at all. Or was impossible to beat, rather. And so GuMiHo's been that guy for... a lot of StarCraft 2, actually. He has been a person you could depend on to push the meta a little bit or try different things. So mech players all over the world like GuMiHo because he's one of the few that consistently goes mech, even when it's not a very meta thing to do. But to me, it's always TVZ and TVT for him. PvP, there were times in the past where he was actually really cool to watch, and I'm thinking way far back. You know, I know he's had cool games since then, of course, but I'm thinking like Shakura's Plateau. You know, this guy forgot to get stim and won with a 15-minute stim timing. So you like GuMiHo because of these games and because of these things and because of the mistakes that makes him look human, but he wins despite being human, I suppose. But TVP just doesn't seem to be a strong suit, and it seems like he is kind of in the... Not in the driver's seat. He's in the passenger seat. Like, he's, you know, he would be looking at Maru to teach him what to do, or Byun to teach him what to do. But that's not always the case. You know, I am harsh on the guy's matchup here, but it's not always the case. And with these 2 victories now under his belt, they were, God, so close to losing. He could have been 4-0'd. But now that he's gotten a couple of wins under his belt, we're also, I think, literally seeing in his gameplay more of that peak GuMiHo TVP that looks totally fine and really quite good, even. He has to be in that kind of peak condition. So, like I pointed out, even his low ground command center after his initial games were all high ground command centers already is like a little sign that something's something's going a little bit better, at least to me, who's really just scared. You know, I'm not sitting here lording it over that I win more TVPs than him, because that's absolutely untrue. It's just more like a please be good, please do better, please do good. Okay. All right, cool, we're good. Whoo! And now that we've got 2 wins under our belt, I'm feeling like GuMiHo has showed some very interesting TVP, and that last game will certainly go down as one of the best TVPs of 2024. And now with that whole rant over, I actually like the guy, I promise. He's going to go for an early push here. This is Ghost River, and so you have this direct push from the natural to natural. ShoWTimE should have a shield battery prepared. More than that, he has another shield battery, and I think that's very appropriate, because he has gone, finally, for a Stargate opener. GuMiHo did not know about this, but knowledge or not, might win against it regardless. This was going to be into Colossus, but we're not going to have any Colossus out anytime soon. In fact, we might not even get the Immortal. Oh no, shield battery overcharge. Oh dear lord. There are no shield batteries. Everything is a disaster. Everything hurts. GuMiHo finally getting an attack in the early game that goes swimmingly. Because he has tried in the other games in this series, and he has been instantly turned around. Finally gets in here, and it is completely devastating. ShoWTimE. Uh-oh, SpaghettiOs. You lose a very hard-fought base race, and then right after, you get beat by this stupid, cheeky, goddamn Terran tank push in the early game. No Protoss likes that feeling. This is bullshit. And this will also lead him to a situation in which he no longer has a map advantage. This could not have been a better second-to-last map after a base race win for GuMiHo moment. This could not have been better for him. And I haven't actually kept track. I don't know what the last map would be, but whatever it is then both of their last lives. I gotta say, ShoWTimE might be holding on to an okay supply right now, but it's very deceiving. He's pretty dead. Amphion's gonna be the last map. Okay, well. Map might not be the issue for Game 7 anyway. It might just entirely be mentality. But Ghost River in this build being the map after what has just happened in Game 5, I think is one of the most unfortunate sequence of events that ShoWTimE could have encountered. And of course, kudos to GuMiHo for executing it correctly, but it is a bit on the nose. It is a very, very powerful build on Ghost River, so ShoWTimE should have mentally prepared for it, and we saw that he tried to literally prepare for it, but there were a couple of mistakes made. Probably one of the biggest ones is just not trying to get ahead of this at all. We'll actually rewind and look to see exactly what went wrong and what could have gone better. See some reinforcements being picked off. Better than staying at home, I suppose. Well, the Phoenix... Nah. I was gonna say, maybe they can stop the Vikings from doing high ground vision, but I don't think so. No, they gotta go for it. Everything or nothing right here. Immortal's getting blasted before the Phoenix even take out the tanks, and the Cyclone number 2, or the Immortal, look at take out... Yeah, taken out by the Cyclones. All right. The tanks will actually get a couple more shots just for good measure, and ShoWTimE will tap out of the game despite breaking that engagement. No need to hype that one up, I feel like. Nowadays, you know, back when there was the 1-1-1, back when we were talking about Puma versus Hero on Ohana every other day, you know, the base being killed, the natural being killed, actually was not a death sentence. You would very commonly see the Protoss try and make a return, a comeback. But that very different scenarios. Very different. Maps are different. The one was, I think, is off one base as well for Puma. And it was before Legacy of the Void, where the minerals were actually decreased. So, yeah. If you lose a Nexus in Legacy of the Void, in this case, you know, 2 Nexus, 2 Command Center, you lose a Nexus, you're just dead. Pretty sure. Pretty sure. So, yeah. So let's go around this again, right? So there's no scout on the Phoenix. I don't think he had any other indication that this was not a Twilight Council opener. Sometimes if they have like 3 adepts instead of any amount of stalkers, that's a little bit of a hint, but I don't think so. But then ShoWTimE also did not do any scouting with his first Phoenix. So this is a really troubling moment for Protoss all around the world, I think. Where is his first Phoenix? Maybe he did, and it was actually just too soon. Maybe I have to take that back, actually. I think it might just be too soon. Oh, no. No, he didn't scout. So, yeah, the first Phoenix actually wouldn't have scouted exactly what's going down. If it had seen the second tank in the medevac positioning, it actually might have. That might have been a clue. But for Protoss players, you know, there's a real conundrum. Either they send out the first Phoenix to scout, and they get the scout and everything's good, or they send the first Phoenix out, and then that's when the proxy Hellion drop comes in and screws them up or something, you know? So, you know, it is a decision to play defensively or offensively with the Phoenix. But because these Phoenix are staying at home, ShoWTimE appears to just literally be countering this exact build without knowing about it. And that's not surprising, actually, considering the map and the power of this build. But nonetheless, he's still not doing it with his Phoenix. Maybe he couldn't. But whenever a Protoss player has the Terran just literally siege up to their natural on their shield batteries, that's a pretty bad time. You want to have the tank siege up here first and then have the siege hop forward if you can. But ShoWTimE... He also gets a little supply blocked. I'm not sure that's the biggest thing. It is very difficult to say exactly what can be done better here. Let's see here. It's a 1 gates... I don't know. I have to get a Protoss in here. You know, because even if he scouts it, what does he do? Even if he literally sees this coming, the Phoenix can't unload the tanks by themselves. Well, no, that's not true. They could at least get an unload on the tanks, because there is actually, like, very little dependable anti-air. There's no Viking, there's no Cyclone with this. So the Phoenix could have at least tried to get the medevac to drop the tanks preemptively, but... Yeah, it's 3 Phoenix. I mean, I don't know how long that would have bought time. Robo in the natural, I think, is something that you can't do on this map, but I see Protoss do it every single time. And I'm wondering what other Protoss think. This causes so many complications, besides the obvious one, which is that it can be shelled at by the tanks. The other one is that the SimCity works against you even more. Yeah, he missed the overcharge. Absolutely. I mean, since you were actually preparing for this from the get-go, I definitely could see ways that you would actually completely change your build. So, for instance, you would instead go, like, no gases, and you would try and get faster gateways or something. You'd get less probes, because you know that they're very committed on the 2 bases. Something like that, right? This is 30 SCPs. This is not an actual 2-base attack so much as it's like a 1 1/4. But on the off chance that they don't do this, or that they see that you're prepared and then just run back home, if you cut your workers at 36, I don't know, let's throw out a number here, you actually still aren't ahead in the economy. So, yeah, I mean, definitely, that's what I'm thinking. The Phoenix just does not seem like a wise plan on Ghost River. I mean, we don't see too many Robo Firsts, but I actually think a Robo First might have done something. Like an Immortal pops out immediately. You still don't have the Colossus in time, I think, but having an Immortal right off the bat alongside maybe more Gateway units instead of all these Phoenix, I don't know. It is tough. It is tough. Gotta see this actually defeated by a Protoss in this exact same scenario, which is pretty hard to find. We do see, yeah, we see a lot more Robo Firsts recently, for sure. So that's why I'm even throwing it out there. But I mean, complications. Just a very unfortunate map to be going into, I think, is ShoWTimE after a brutal base race loss. Amphion is the final battlegrounds of the HomeStory Cup Championship. In the bottom, we have GuMiHo. And the top, it is ShoWTimE. So ShoWTimE, he has a brutal loss in a base race. There were some things he could have done better. And that is inarguable, even if it's not the Dark Shrine that I kept y'all learning about, you know? Completely disagree with me, that's fine. But it's inarguable that there could be better things done in a base race of 20-plus minutes. And everything that goes a little bit better could possibly have won ShoWTimE the game. And he would have already won the series. Instead, he loses it and then goes onto one of the most brutal maps with a very brutal build and is obviously thinking about it because he starts preparing for it before it even is scouted. Like, he literally thinks it's on the way without any knowledge whatsoever. He just knows the map. But still fails in defending against it, and you gotta start, you know, being like, well, that's just freebie for turn there. It's cool. It's really cool. It's really cool. And then you have your final map. Maybe you can shake off all the bad feelings from the base trade, from the Ghost River map. Perhaps you can reset your mentality. But at the end of the day, you are still facing GuMiHo, who might not have had a very good start to the series, and some of his wins seem more desperate than ShoWTimE's, but is winning. And at the end of the day, what matters are the points on the board here. So if he can win, he can win. He can win this game, and he can win the entire series and successfully pull a comeback. Gonna choose to go for a high ground command center, actually. Throwing back a little bit to the beginning of this tournament. Beginning of the series. I just watched the probe chain exchange there, and that... Was that on purpose? Reason to do that? I don't know. Anyways. We got a high ground command center, so GuMiHo's all nice and safe. ShoWTimE really wants to be safe. He is scouting everywhere for potential proxy. And honestly, I'm glad to see that, because GuMiHo, as much as I think that he, you know, can show some shakiness in the matchup, has clearly gotten any type of confidence that he was missing back, if he was missing confidence. He is clearly willing to go for early aggression, and there is no way that you cross off your list of potential builds from a Korean Terran the Proxy Marauder. You do not cross that off the list. That is absolutely something GuMiHo could have thrown out for Game 7 to win this game. But he isn't. ShoWTimE is going to be probably happier for that. If he can get his mental under control, you know, there's a lot of things about this series that are very good for ShoWTimE. Whenever he played a pretty basic 2 or 3 gate, because, you know, gotta be scared of the early aggression, he has done very well. That's a little annoying. Reaper successfully grabs 2 probes and escapes. Make it feel good. But you are on a final map that is also a little weird again, where you have the entire left side of the map not traversable for ground units. And while eventually that might favor, like, your warp prism, I guess, it, you know, honestly, at the beginning really makes you very, very wary of the medevac play. Early medevac, mid-game medevac, even a late-game Doom drop, because you just don't have much to do over there. You can scout it, of course, but until you actually mine out these minerals or break down the rocks, you can't access it with Stalkers. And ShoWTimE, you know, maybe this actually would have been an appropriate place to go for Stargate, maybe, but it doesn't even matter. I think after that last game, you're just... After the last game combined with all the other games going okay for you with the Twilight Council, yeah, I don't think you go for Stargate. Even if it's the best map in the world for it. GuMiHo is going to be going for a very interesting build here. So this looks like a 2-1-1. Yeah, there's a second barracks that I completely missed. Actually, I did see on the production tab and didn't even think about it. 2-1-1 TVP. And this is actually very close, if not almost identical. This is actually like a TVZ 2-1-1. I didn't pay enough attention. I should have. But this is like no... Oh, he did get Cyclone. Okay, never mind. I thought it was literally no factory units, which is pretty dangerous to do. But now he does have it. He will be hitting still around 5 minutes. And ShoWTimE is prepared for something to enter into the main base. But even though this is a map that is... It looks like it's abusive for medevacs, the 2-1-1 is not a popular style in TVP. It happens. Not that often. GuMiHo sees that stalkers are prepared and doesn't really want to risk what else could be behind that. ShoWTimE with good eyes there. Sees the little blip on the mini-map. Oh, Jesus. Oh, good. Okay. And warps in more stalkers. Good thing, too, because GuMiHo is going to try and trick him and me by just jumping over these minerals. And ShoWTimE was on top of it. That was a really nice timing for him, not going to lie, but also very important that he was able to pay attention to that because he was being slightly distracted off to the right side from the cyclone. And the observer came in at a time where the stalkers could move, see the medevacs weren't there, and figure the only other way is that they were going here. Like, that just worked out really well timing-wise. Third CC on location again for GuMiHo. He's really been quite safe about this. That's actually one thing that I'm talking a lot about how ShoWTimE was doing well because he was winning so convincingly in the first couple of games. But perhaps end of the series game, we can talk that ShoWTimE really hasn't seemed to have done anything to particularly make GuMiHo's life hard. So, if you are truly the better player, then playing straight up macro might be the wise choice. But we don't even see kind of those tiny little differences made of like, well, this guy always 3C or 3rd CC low ground. How about a cheeky 2 Zealots? Cheeky 2 Zealots down here would devastate GuMiHo because you time it out right too, and it's like a command center that's a quarter of the way done. And they're pushing. Perfect. Absolutely perfect timing. Never happens. Has never happened. ShoWTimE is doing a great job defending against the aggression, though, and that's, as I said, if you are the better macro player, good for you. And right now, ShoWTimE is doing all the good things that we saw him do in, for instance, Game 2 or Game 1. He deflects GuMiHo's tank push rather easily. Now, he did incorporate proper units. He wasn't being outrageously greedy, but he did deal with it. Now he has a little map control with his stalkers. GuMiHo seems to be going into more of that tank production. No swap off to reactor yet. He's now up 3cc. Will they finish as an orbital? And just go for a little drop as he builds up at home. Double Forge coming out. I said that ShoWTimE wasn't greedy. And he got 2 Immortals. He had a decent amount of units. All 4 Colossus came out. But he also skipped the Forges. Now it is time to kind of make up for the lost upgrade time. Something he's done in previous games as well. Should be a very comfortable game for ShoWTimE. This is harkening back more to Game 2 for me. There's a little more action here from GuMiHo, a little more testing of ShoWTimE's defensive skills. But so far, so good on ShoWTimE. GuMiHo, obviously doing fine himself, even up a couple of workers. Army supply, almost even, and he does have faster upgrades. He'll have a 1-1 timing, actually, for 60 seconds? GuMiHo's 8 Marine drop, not finding any success, comes back home. Okay, buddy. Tried. And things remain rather actionless. ShoWTimE knows pretty much what's going on. On GuMiHo's side, he's got a Zealot on at least one of the attack paths. Actually, very little vision up until his main base. So there is an observer. But GuMiHo is going for more of a direct push, at least by the looks of it. I was going to say, though, like, tanks might be more of a main push. They are. They don't get dropped necessarily a lot of the time. That wouldn't be a bad idea this time around. But get them convinced you're going to attack them at the front and then go for a big old doom drop in the back. That actually could have been really cool. But ShoWTimE also thinking, what if he did that? Loses his information. GuMiHo ensured there was no observer over him. Still says, you know what? Need to be careful about that. And the Zealot being there was really helpful. He was already, I think, kind of thinking that this could be a problem as he started to move his army a little bit backwards. And now, obviously, he has those stalkers in the main base, ensuring that it could never happen. So I do think that was a cool idea. I think you got to try it, but it didn't work out. GuMiHo back to just that frontal push. Upgrade advantage no longer existing. It's all even Stevens. 4th command center on the way for GuMiHo. Double engineering bay finally up for him as well. +2 attack starting. That's the most important thing. For ShoWTimE, he should be starting 2-2. Yep, there we go. Right as I'm speaking. Both players almost maxed out. We got a 5th base on the way for ShoWTimE as GuMiHo about halfway down to this 4th. Building a fusion core way faster this game. Interesting. Interesting. That's really fast. It almost makes you wonder if he's not going to go for Liberators with it. He's going to get a different upgrade. We'll wait 45 seconds for that. Generally, the fusion core is going to come down, well, when you're on 4 bases, not 3. When +1 ship weapons is finishing, I think. And as you also start producing Liberators, which is a real troublesome thing to ask for this early on in the game, because you're getting Medivacs, Vikings, and Liberators, that's a lot to ask from a starport. Yeah, that's what I thought. He was going to go for fast Caduceus Reactor. I don't mind it. I don't mind it. I actually think that's pretty cool. You know, Helazur also has tried this. You know, understandably when this was released again, because Caduceus Reactor has existed in other forms. That's when people test it. That's when people try things out with it. But even then, a lot of people were like, nah, not worth it. Helazur did a couple times, but GuMiHo doing it here this late into its patch, actually pretty neat. I think it will help out eventually. That attack was just never going to happen, so that's why I didn't bother commenting on it. The tanks for siege, the bio is ready. Nope, nope. But yeah, Caduceus Reactor done. That means the Medivacs are going to regain energy faster. So every time you go out in the map, every time you stim and they use their energy, there's a chance that the game and the battle gets so far along that you actually, even with 8 Medivacs, or 6 in this game, you might actually end up with 0 energy. And that Caduceus Reactor is actually quite powerful to not let that happen. Well, this is a little awkward. A Medivac coming back home, but there's still plenty of army. And the chokes with the tanks still sieged up are really giving ShoWTimE a tough time trying to end this game. Some of the first maps did have more open opportunities around that 3rd and 4th base. This one, you do have that backside that I love that ShoWTimE's getting a gateway for to abuse. And you do have the far left eventually. I would actually really love for ShoWTimE to go ahead and start mining out the far left. He does have that map control. It's very clear that GuMiHo is heading into that more turtle game. And while the fusion core was much faster than usual, his ultimate plan is still what you would expect, which multiple starports, lib range, +1 ship weapons. Good EMP. That should discourage ShoWTimE from doing this, but no, apparently. Hero is whispering in his ear. It's the devil on his shoulder. He's like, go for it, go for it. It's going to work. Don't even worry about it. I don't know if that's true. Even upgrades. Tanks all siege. Bio, not even really microing. They figured that they could actually stand strong, protect the tanks, and they do so alongside Little Sim City to help. I swear to God, there's a little CJ Hero on the side of ShoWTimE's shoulder that's like, do it. Do it. My worry is not that he does that attack, because he probably has time to replace it, but that was not good. Look at the supply. Resources lost, heavily favoring GuMiHo. Good lord. My worry is that he's going to get horse blinders on, and he's going to think, I need to do this, I need to do this, I need to do this. And I don't think it's really true. You know, one of the biggest reasons that his previous games in these type of late game battles have looked kind of good for him is that he's been able to circumvent the tanks. You know, that game too, he just kind of beat-bopped from 3rd to 4th, kind of naturalish kind of too, and eventually found the tanks in a vulnerable position, the army too far away to defend, and he won. He also had a much bigger bank in that game, where this game is actually favorable to GuMiHo, but still. But he's not opening up any opportunities. You know, it is more limited on this map. The left attack path enters in the same way that the right one does for the most part. The left side of the map entirely is not being used. And I think that's a little more on ShoWTimE to use than GuMiHo currently. GuMiHo does actually have to deal with War Prisms, despite the missile turrets that he tried to place up, so that is annoying. But at the same time, he actually ran through the middle of the map, apparently unbeknownst to ShoWTimE, and just went ahead and killed an entire Nexus. I think ShoWTimE might have gotten a glimpse of this incoming, and then maybe thought that he wouldn't actually commit to it, because his army was certainly not in time. This is a lot of simming going down for GuMiHo to try and escape, however. That was only some of his army. Obviously, the tanks did not come along with it, so it was a bit of a gamble. But he does successfully escape with majority of his army, and the medevacs have plenty of energy because there haven't been many battles, but also because of the upgrade. Main base did have to take a little bit of a wall up there. 9 SCVs went down, some reinforcements went down as well, but all for the greater good. GuMiHo did prioritize the correct things in the correct order for sure. Even these minerals are still up and running, giving him another attack path not available to him. And you could imagine maybe attacks on the right side, DTs on the left. DTs, by the way! Anyways, tries to find the army out of position by going way over to the right side, where he has that proxy gate. Oh, that was killed. That's just his army. Just kidding. Where he had a proxy gate. And even that doesn't work. The tanks were able to be repositioned fast enough. Sensor towers, pretty good skill to have, gotta say. And that alongside what is... Let's just kind of say that it's 2 major attack paths. It's just not... It's not finding GuMiHo out of position. GuMiHo forgot armor, by the way, so his upgrade's not as good as his opponent's. Perhaps the most important upgrade is finished, though, and that is the +2 ship weapons. Liberator is still devastating, plus the EMP, and it's truly devastating. Only 1 ghost, though. Maybe a couple more, a scooch more would be better, but okay. I would say 3 ghosts is considered the bare minimum. And that used to be comically bare minimum back when it was the size of the sun. Now it's like, no, you really need to have at least 3. Tanks are not siege. Liberators are pointing the wrong direction. This is a great start to the battle for ShoWTimE. However, much of the bio army remained actually unfazed. They were not attacked by anything, so while all the tanks get destroyed and the Liberators don't help out, well, the bio was still there ready to rumble, and the Liberators are still alive. Warp Prism in the main base once again, however, and more Zealots as well. Marines respawning, in that choke, they're going to work out fine. Orbital does lift, not going to be killed accidentally. And it looks like the Liberators are going to successfully escape. ShoWTimE actually without enough stalkers to take advantage of the Liberators looking the wrong direction. Once again, I think the priorities here are good for GuMiHo. He deals with the frontal attack first, and then deals with the main. And obviously you send something, but if you know you're about to be dual-pronged attack, and it's very, very obvious, every race should be trying to set up 1 minor attack and a 2nd major attack, you kind of want to have the priorities in your head from the get-go. First, I'm going to defend the attack, then I'm going to deal with the main base. Sometimes that's a disaster. Sometimes the main base ends up being a bigger problem. But one of the worst things you can do is panic over everything that's happening in the game and then just lose on both sides. GuMiHo Liberator is going to help him further. I do believe 6 more are very much necessary, despite him already being at 10. More freedom, more gooder. And they are pumping out right now as ShoWTimE tries to take the battle. Oh, Lord, baby Jesus, that's a good disruptor shot. That was a good one. At the very least, GuMiHo gets 2 disruptors in return. That was actually probably an even trade, if I had to guess. 2 disruptors, pretty expensive. Well, actually, no, it's probably still worse for the Terran, but... There's something in return. Dark Shrine! Oh, Game 7. Thank you, baby Jesus. No, I think this is fantastic, because you could also get Dark Shrine Blink, and then he could just blink over these minerals. And after 19 minutes of not really worrying about detection and harassment into the natural, I would say, you know, Warp Prism main, natural DT, and the main attack elsewhere, and you've really got a stew going. You have a potential game-winning moment right there. Still not realizing. Oh, no, the +3 armor is... What the... This engineering base is so weird. Why is it out here? Okay. I'm a big fan of engineering base surrounding planetaries. At a certain point, I think there's basically an agreement between the Protoss and the Terran, which is like, you're not going to SCV repair fast enough. You know, with DT Blink anyway. So if you're not going to repair fast enough, then why even try to repair? Just put a bunch of things you're under planetary. Not really what that engineering base is doing, though. I don't know why that's there. Liberator is getting even a little bit confident, trying to take a more forward approach here. They're taking advantage of the chokes as they move. Possibly one of the bigger... I was going to say, like, what is the most wide open area on this map? There's not really one. And actually, GuMiHo has already successfully moved all the way across the map, killing this base that has been killed once before. Disruptor is unable to help. I think they just helped kill the Nexus. ShoWTimE, in that base race game, He never had a true Stargate swap, but he's trying to get to a real one here right now, and it might just be too late. GuMiHo sees the opportunity, especially as the Protoss army is basically admitting that it cannot defeat that. So both players certainly in the know that it's going to be a base race, but that Dark Shrine placed in the main base is going to look so useless. And going to look so dumb. God damn it. ShoWTimE. I think it's a great thing that he added that on, but GuMiHo, if he sees it, he's going to kill it first because it is a good thing to have on a base trade. Of course he targets that first and foremost. ShoWTimE has plenty in the bank. GuMiHo has plenty in the bank. One of the players has some time to think, though, and that is GuMiHo. He has his main and natural still ready to go, so he has that time to think. I'm going to bring back some Liberators, keep my bio on the front, and that will hold on to 2 bases, my main and my natural. ShoWTimE is going to lose all of his technology, all of his production, and while his economy actually remains mostly untouched, the issue is then how do you use all that economy? There's upsides and downsides to both of these things. But GuMiHo, by being able to actually, like, if his main base was immediately sieged in the way that he immediately sieged ShoWTimE's, it's a very different game. Incredibly different. In fact, that actually would be game over, I think. I don't think GuMiHo having these 2 bases would have actually been enough. But instead, he holds on to his production line, he holds on to his reinforcements, and he holds on to a whopping 5 command centers that just happen to be in the main, in the natural. GuMiHo did complete all of his upgrades, 3-3, and almost +3 ship weapons, something that was also guarded thanks to the quick thinking and the beauty of Liberators, let's be real. I'm praising this amazing thing as if it's not thought of 100% of the time, but, you know, sometimes in the midst of a base race, people do forget that Liberators can return home and can siege chokes. I don't know what this command center thought it was going to be doing, but I love that ShoWTimE rebuilt the Dark Shrine. Thank you very much. That is seen by GuMiHo. But unlike game 5 or 4, whatever it was, there are actually a lot of scans. Even more ghosts at this point, too. This SimCity not working out very well for the Stalkers, who cannot kill the Liberators fast enough, with 2 more also ready to siege up. So that ends up being a disaster, because at the same time, GuMiHo is going to take advantage of that, go on killing more of the bases of ShoWTimE. So while ShoWTimE's economy was untouched, it certainly isn't anymore. Now his major problem is actually the pylons that have been destroyed. So he's going to spend approximately 1,000 minerals replacing those. Fortunately, he has 1,000 minerals to give. All the probes will die on the top base, but still 37 probes to 8 SCVs. 5 orbitals, but then they do have to worry about the scans. So I would be cautious about slapping all your mules down. Plus, what minerals? The minerals that are guarding your base? Is that where you slap the mules down? I don't know. Liberator's still a major problem, and just look at that army supply. Oh my god. 100 army supply difference, literally. 89 army for ShoWTimE to 189 from GuMiHo. Oh my god. This is what happens when GuMiHo is allowed to actually continue producing, even though his mineral income is in the dumpster. He also had a bank by the time this base trade had actually initiated. Disruptors are actually getting taken out. I guess they were trying to catch up with the main army. But that was very disappointing there for ShoWTimE, who I believe has lost almost all of his production. Yeah, he has a Twilight Council, and that is it. No gateways, no robo, lost Cybernetics core. It was actually kind of tucked into the corner, almost as it tried to be hidden. Not. We are getting the gateways rebuilt. And the pylons. And because he has 3,000 minerals, he does need those pylons. But we're not going to have very good armies. We're going to have nothing but charge lots, stalkers, and maybe a couple of sentries. But unlike that other base trade, the sentries aren't going to be that helpful. This is an overwhelming number of Terran units. This is going to be it, guys. GuMiHo, a very different base trade for the final game. But nonetheless, another 1-1 by GuMiHo, which completes the comeback. GuMiHo, 4-3 to win the HomeStory Cup. I'm going to be real. I thought that was the case, and I was not sure because I saw so many tweets simultaneously because I was catching up after I went to sleep. So I was like, GuMiHo, ShoWTimE, GuMiHo, ShoWTimE. And I was like, oh god, which one won? But now I know. GuMiHo officially brings back the game. ShoWTimE denied a chance at a championship, which both players do not have as many championships as you would consider, considering they've been in a 14 years almost entirety of StarCraft 2. So either way, I'm happy. But I will say, GuMiHo, he got to the GSL finals recently. He got a GSL championship back in the day. Kind of felt like he got a little bit of that recognition of being the best player in the world at some certain time. But ShoWTimE hasn't really had that recognition, and it would have been cool to see him do it in a European tournament. But GuMiHo seems like he kind of rallied himself into the TVP mind state in the nick of time. And then his scrappiness as a player that has been consistent across his entire career, even back when he was random in GSL, I think also really shined in these weirder games. Oh, kudos to GuMiHo. Thanks for watching, everyone.